My name is Gregory Rozier. I'm 62 years old and I'm a recovering opioid addict.
While the public perception is that opioid addiction is a topic affecting those in their 20s and 30s, there is a new face to the opioid crisis, and it's older.
As a young kid, I started off just about like everybody else did, smoking pot, stealing my grandfather's beer, and getting into the high school scene with psychedelics and acid and mescaline and mushrooms and hash and opiates in them days. And it just seemed like everything I did, I was a thrill seeker. I'd want to try a little bit more. Then eventually I got exposed to amphetamines, which was black beauties, amphetamine 20 milligrams, disoxins, pollutants, and all the different stuff was coming out of the drugstores in the late 70s and early 80s, with Seconal, Nebitol, Tuinol, Quaalude. And then the more harder drugs, it was being acquired through the pharmacies or the doctors, which was Dilaudid, Demerol, and morphine. The tablet forms, not the black market form. And at the same time, I had experienced heroin a few times.
While some middle-aged and older adults become addicted to opioids by using illegal drugs like heroin, some older adults start off becoming addicted by using prescription pain medications.
I've been told, and this has worked perfect for me and other people I know, if you have a history of abusing any type of drug, when you go to a doctor, before he even gets to the point of writing a prescription out, tell that doctor, I have a history of abusing A, B, C. If it's a painkiller, tell them that. Tell them up front. Tell them the truth. Tell the doctor before he ever gets to the point of writing a prescription out. Tell the doctor that I have a history of abusing numerous different types of drugs. Put it right out front.
I grew up in a neighborhood where there was a lot of bars, and I don't think then I would look at it as my stepdads or dad or anything being alcoholics, but they were. The way of life that I grew up with is what we use as slang as hustling, which is you're doing something illegal. It's like I grew up with being around numbers, being around, that was before the lottery even got in, being around a lot of gambling, a lot of drugs being sold, a lot of illegal liquor, things like that. That's how I grew up. I mean, I was able to go in bars because the people knew me at the age of 10. And I actually went to the bars and made a hustle. I shined shoes. Back then, you didn't have to have an ID to buy cigarettes. You could be 10 years old and go in the store and get a pack of cigarettes. So I used to run errands. Eventually, that fell off to where I was started smoking at 12. By the time I was 13, I was smoking weed. You know, was drinking, you know. By the time I hit 16, I was experiencing with different types of drugs, pills and cough syrup and things like that. You know, the way I got them was I sold weed. You know, and to me back then, now that I look at it, I didn't see nothing wrong with it because I was surrounded around it. And I just thought that was the normal way to live. So that's what I did. By the time I was 19, I had my first experience with heroin. I had made up in my mind I needed the help. At the age of 60, I just started living.
Percy Whiteside was addicted to opioid drugs until he became clean and sober at the age of 60. Younger people becoming addicted to opioids is also affecting older adults. More grandparents and relatives end up taking care of their grandchildren because the biological parents are addicted to opioids. Younger family members addicted to opioids also often steal pain medications from their older family members.
I knew definitely, at the beginning of this year, January, I knew she was gonna die. I knew. Mima was always what they called me as grandma, and then Mommy is what you call me now, Mima Mommy.
Do you
So,
like Mima Mommy?
no. But you know, if that's what they need to do to, be happy, that's okay. I already raised my kids. Last thing I want to do is raise another set of kids, especially two. But that doesn't matter. They're a lot. Who knows how much longer I have, and I can shape their worlds and help their worlds to be better.
My name is Aretha Holly. I'm a pharmacist licensed in the state of Ohio, believe it or not, or I can't believe, 50 years this year will be the amount of time I've spent in the field of pharmacy, most of it in the hospital setting. I've been here at the Area Office on Aging for the last 2 years, and I'm here today to speak to the issue of opioid, the crisis that we have in the nation with opioids. And I think the thing that I most want to do is to impress upon people that it's not always the face that you think it is. That to get from a legitimate prescription for opioids to an addiction isn't a huge leap. And I'm just going to give you a scenario. If a person comes to a physician who is elderly, and I fit that description right now, and I'm considered elderly, and I've got a hip problem or a knee problem, say I've had surgery or I've had a fall, it's not unusual to get a prescription for Vicodin or some other semi-synthetic opioid product. To take that legitimately for a week or something is not problematic. But if a sustained prescription is needed, then it becomes problematic. And the issue with that is that opioids impact the brain in a way that it satisfies the pleasure system. And so there's a euphoria that takes place there and a perception change that takes place that feels good. And so a lot of times people want to repeat that feeling. They chase it and they become what's called tolerant. And tolerance means that I need more of the same drug to produce the effect that I used to get. From tolerance, then we go with an increased amount, and then we go to a dependence or an addiction. And so it's not a huge leap. Upstanding people like me, people you see every day, your loved ones, you, may very well be potentially a prospect for becoming addicted to opioids. One of the things that I'd like to share with you is that when I went to pharmacy school and came out, it was not usual for physicians to even dose with prescriptions a lot of pain medications because the fear was the addiction. But in the 90s, the pharmaceutical companies convinced physicians that they had come up with this new set of drugs that didn't have the potential for addiction that they thought. And so they began to prescribe, and then we began to live longer. And so the two coming together made it very impactful for the elderly community. Of course, we've got a lot of people who are not old addicted and having to be treated with Narcan or overdosing. But the elderly population, primarily because of legitimate beginnings, have wound up with an illegitimate use. And so that makes it very difficult. I want to just share one story with you. I'm also an associate pastor at a church. And one of the things that I do in confidence is to assist people where need is. And one of the members came to me one day and said, Reverend Holly, I have a problem. I know I've got a problem with prescription drugs. Can you help me come off of these drugs? So I set up a regimen of de-escalating the number of tablets that the individual would take per day over time until they got off. Very brave of that individual to do that. I have not broken confidence in terms of disclosing that because that wouldn't be the right thing to do. But she was smart enough and aware enough to know that she had an issue and didn't want to continue with that. But I'm saying that it's very easy. And so what I think needs to happen is there needs to be early education. And what I mean by that is starting very young so that we can break this cycle. But for those of us who are senior, We know we have metabolism problems. We don't do things like we used to do them. The impact of drugs on our system is very different than the impact on drugs of younger people. And so I think there's an awareness that needs to come into play there. If you need a prescription for pain medication, make sure you need it and that you take it appropriately and that you take it for the length of time that is needed. And if you see there's a problem, there should be no shame in seeking help to try to overcome that problem. And that would probably be my greatest message to people, that it's an addictive drug. Now they're putting the reins on. So CVS came out with a policy that they will only give a 7-day supply to people who have a new prescription for an opioid product, which is very new. So I think a lot of people in the marketplace are trying to find ways to stem the tide if they can, or to inform people if they can. So it's going to take a lot, though, because some people are already so far gone. And we need more empathy, and I hate to say sympathy, but more understanding, more knowledge, and more empathy, because it could be you.
The quickest way to grow the size of a problem is to turn your back on it. This video is just the beginning of an awareness campaign to address the growing older adult opioid addiction problem. To find solutions to this problem, join the Area Office on Aging in its pursuit to save the lives of our older citizens.